Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Sack Down. Today we've got our first LCS guest, the one that everyone wanted. I mean, if you have a talk show, you can't have anyone else representing the LCS besides for the guy that talks the most in the entire LCS, which is Yappa. We're going to try to bring some interesting topics to you. I know everyone just wants to talk about, hey, why do you all chat and like all this type of bullshit. We're going to try to keep it a little bit different, get into your career, just talk about your improvement and everything for you as a player. Also, this is going to be on Last Free Nation, obviously. So if you do not follow the channel, if you do not subscribe to the channel, subscribe to it because this is where the Sack Down will live forever. So when we're going into this podcast here, we'll kind of just peel back the layers and we'll give them some insight into like how we do the show. Normally, it's pretty free flow. We talk about whatever we want to on this show. We kind of lead the conversation. Yamato and I talk back and forth. If we have different points or one of us wants to bring something up, we'll message each other. But the main thing we start with is like, what is the starting point of the show going to be? So I thought about, knowing APA. Like I've been playing with APA in SoloQ since he was literally like 15, I think. When like 2016 was when he first got like high and low, right? Like 2015.
Pretty much, yeah. 2015, 2016, around there.
Yeah, and you were what, like 15, 16, something like this?
Well, it was 8 years ago, so I was probably 13 or 14.
Oh, okay, nice. So I've been playing
shit,
solo
father
queue.
and son duo.
I've been playing solo queue with this guy since I was like since he was like 14. I was like probably like 35 or something at that point, but it is what it is. And like in the beginning, like APA, like he would just trash talk everyone in solo queue. He was just the most annoying, guy you'll play with. But like over time, it's just like, and this is how solo queue works. Everyone just kind of becomes friends eventually. You play with the same people over and over again. And then even if you like don't like each other, the fact that you guys are still in the games and everyone else is just like in your games inting, you eventually just become friends with like the players that are in the games and not inting. So you just like kind of become friends over time. So I knew APA like from 2016, started becoming friends with him around like 2020, like season 10, we started doing and stuff. And I remember like you were already insane player. Like you're getting rank 1. You're one of the best solo queue players in NA. Obviously, people would say you had a cheesy style. You'd play Talia and Aurelion Sol. This guy was perma roaming. Yeah, he would perma roam. But you were somebody who was really high rated. And I remember playing with you. I'm like, yeah, this guy should definitely at least be an academy. Like there's no way that you get rank 1 in NA and you don't get into some type of academy team. You were playing on amateur teams at the time. You were on Barrage for a little bit. Then you ended up going to like Maryville to compete. And I wanted to like ask you about this original period where you were trying to get into competitive, because for me watching you play, like it was very clear from duo queuing with you and seeing you play against other challenger mids and other like LCS mids, the fact that you're already competing with them, the fact that you're already beating them, you should be able to get some level of like opportunity. Like people should at least test out, see can your style work in a more competitive environment. But it feels like you didn't get a shot for a super long period of time, regardless of how well you're performing. So I would love to like ask you about how it was at this period, because it felt like you just kept on getting shafted. Like there was never a time for you to get your opportunity that you deserved, regardless of how high ranked you got in solo queue or how well you were performing in these games.
I think, well, just to be honest, I think the major reason why I wasn't picked up was just because of how toxic I was. Like I was just way too toxic in solo queue. Like I was never like competitively banned or anything. I wasn't like that type of toxic.
You didn't have to throw that one in there, but okay.
But I just flamed everybody. Like any pro that was being a noob in my solo queue game, I was flaming them. So I imagine I had a great deal of people who just hated me. But I think I just realized that I wanted to go pro. So once I made that realization, in like 2020 or like 2021, whatever time it was, I just like really put genuinely an insane amount of hours into the game. And then slowly it just became, you kind of have to take me. Like when I did end up getting picked up by TL Academy, I had like 7 other academy offers. So like that split was like a major break point for me.
Yeah. And do you think that like the year that I'm mainly looking at here would be 2022. Do you think that this was the year where you really should have been picked up, where you ended up going to Maryville? Because that for me was when you'd already been like rank 1, you're perma top 10 on the ladder, and you had already played with Barrage. You had already placed like 7th, 8th in Proving Grounds. This is when you had like the amateur plus academy system, and you guys would all play in this like 16 team tournament. And in this tournament, you guys were beating out academy teams. So if you're beating academy teams, shouldn't you at least be an academy in 2022? Was this like a point where you felt like really screwed over by just the entire academy ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. When I was talking with Maryville, I was talking with Clerky, the director there, and I'm like, I kept postponing when I'm gonna like eventually join, not really sign because I didn't sign anything, but join Maryville. I kept postponing it because I'm like, oh, I think I'm gonna get an offer here, I get an offer there, and then I ended up just like, I think I was just perpetually the second or third choice for all these academy teams, and they always just got like the guy above me. So I definitely felt like I just walked out of situations when I felt I was like, damn, I'm so much better than like at least half of these guys in the academy scene right now.
I want to hear some names, bro. Like, who are some of the people that were getting academy offers over you at the time where you were like, I'm just like way better than this guy at this point?
I have to look back. 2022 academy.
I feel like there has to be like some people that if we bring it up now, it's just crazy that like that you can't get academy offers over these people.
Here, let me
I'm
see.
just curious who got into LCS, like who slipped through, you know? If there's some names that slipped through somehow.
I think like
I never watched any academy.
the TSM guy, like there was like Takeover, there was like Pretty, Soligo.
For sure.
I think those are the big three that I was like kind of upset about because I would face them in solo queue, and I'd think to myself, man, these guys are fucking dog shit. So
yeah,
those are the three that I was kind of pressed about. Some of the others I can understand, like when Harry was brought over or Spires was still in the academy then. Who else? Like Palafox was in the academy then / Copy. Like those guys, I'm okay with getting spots because they're like were either already there or like similar trajectory to me. But then the other like I guess like imports, I was kind of pissed off about.
Yeah.
You know, on my end, APA, like it's very, very nice to meet you. I wrote you in the chat before. It was kind of based what you were telling me, you know, that you shaved your head in some kind of solidarity that you didn't tell me about, kind of based. Because I shaved my head after you guys beat T1.
Yeah.
Kind of curious. I'm kind of curious to follow through the line because the main thing that is so interesting for me as someone that's outside of LCS is like the whole idea of how there's two angles that are the most interesting to me. Because in your case, in terms of how you joined the LCS was rather unique. And at the same time, you've managed to consistently improve in a region that seems so fucking difficult to improve in terms of what Dom tells me about solo queue. He tells me that like the players that are rank 1 are like the 2 worst players of the last series that I just watched in Isles and fucking Armao. And they are rank 1 on the ladder. I don't know what's going on. To start off somewhere, I guess the main question for me is, when you joined Team Liquid, right, in terms of what your like kind of career trajectory was, because it was pretty random, I imagine, in terms of how Harry panned out, because I had to get to the point where they need to put in a player that doesn't speak pretty much the language of the other players. It needs to get that extreme for you to get an opportunity. I'm curious, before everything kind of went down with the main roster, in terms of how it was working with Spawn at the time, how did you feel in terms of your career trajectory? Did it feel like, oh, LCS is happening next year? Or where did you feel like in terms of your path to, let's say, like pro, like the major leagues? How obvious was it? Or did it feel distant even then before they came knocking on your door to play for the main roster?
I think so to speak on last summer, before I was promoted, I think I felt like I was the best mid laner in Academy. My team was first place. We were first place by like a mile, pretty much, before I ended up getting promoted. So I felt like I was the best mid laner in Academy. I thought Mir, my jungler, I don't know if you know who Mir is. I thought he was also the best jungler in Academy by like a mile. So I felt pretty confident that I would at least get like tryouts going into like the next spring, so spring of 2024. And then, I mean, you say like kind of random. I still think it's like just lucky that I'm just randomly promoted onto the LCS team, and then I think I performed well enough to make Worlds and just like solidify that spot. But it was most definitely just like a lucky thing for me. Like very easily, if Harry played a little bit better, probably I probably don't get a starting spot.
Which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy to think about. It's insane how everything gets structured around, because it comes back to the second portion of what I was wondering about, because you've managed to consistently improve.
Yeah.
You worked with Spawn the year before in Team Liquid Academy, and then you guys continued over on the main roster, right, when everything was restructured to be English speaking again, is my understanding. In terms of you improving, in terms of tracking your own improvement and how you've pushed yourself forward, what are things that you have done different? Because I always tell Dom, I'm like, yo, the APA is so based. He says, played against Caps side lanes well. He looks at how he side lanes. He adapts it to his own gameplay. As a coach myself, I'm like, damn, what a dream.
Yeah,
What is your methodology, my man? I need to know. You need to teach everybody out there, man.
Well, I'll just be honest, if you tell Spawn I'm a dream player to have, he would completely disagree with you. I'm very stubborn sometimes. I'm sure he's going to see this and like laugh in my face. So, but
okay.
I think I'm just I was going to keep using the word lucky. Like I have so many people who are helping me learn. Like I talk with Impact all the time. I talk with Spawn all the time. I talk with Core all the time. And then, I've just had 3 international experiences so far, like EWC Worlds MSI, where I just get to face just the goats of the game and just learn from them. So I have like insane teachers, and then I just have had insane practice compared to like the other LCS players.
But do you think that's actually the case? Because I think one of the problems that we've had in North America is it felt like for years we just had like the same players going, and then they would go international. We'd hear the same thing every single time. It'd always be like, oh, like the problem is that once you go international, these teams, they'll exploit any minor weakness and just make a massive advantage out of it, and you can't even play the game. We've always heard this, and it feels like there actually hasn't been much improvement for teams that would go like to pretty much every single international event. And I've been telling Yamato the whole time up until this year, it hasn't felt like we've had a team like Team Liquid in North America, like a team that you can actually have hope for. A lot of times it was kind of like they would go internationally and I'd be like, please don't fucking make us look too bad, bro. Please don't embarrass us. Like that was the feeling I had. But I actually have some hope for North America now. So like, is it just luck, or there has to be some way that you guys break down games, or you guys are able to like actually extract value from these experiences that other teams just haven't been able to do, I would say.
Well, I've not been on other teams, so it's hard for me to relate to them.
Yeah.
But at least for us, I think as a whole, we just care so much about getting better. Like in all the boot camps we've done, we would like constantly just have team talks about what we're fucking up. And then like even recently, like we lost a couple sprint sets versus Flying C9. And I just like talked to Mebdi for like an hour. I was like, Mebdi, why are we so dog shit now? We're just like getting shit on when we're beating them on stage. So what's happening? And we talked about it for a little bit. He called me intern SoloQ, said my mechanics aren't good. I was pointing out things I didn't like within his gameplay. So I think we're just at some points we're very honest with each other, and then we take that feedback very well. So I think it's that, and then we just care a tremendous amount about doing well.
Yeah, so there's something that I would be like interested in is just at what point were you able to actually take feedback like this? Because I know like you from SoloQ, this doesn't seem like core to your personality that you would be able to like completely drop ego and just accept. Is it because of like the status of your teammates, or like why do you think that like you're able to do this? Or is this something that you've always been like in a team environment and just in SoloQ you just don't give a fuck about people's opinions?
Well, I'm not always like this. I won't lie. Like I said, I'm definitely not like the perfect teammate. I'm still very stubborn in how I view the game sometimes. So like if Core, Impact, or Spawn, or like whoever it is tells me what they think I'm doing is wrong, I'll try to disagree very aggressively until I'm proven wrong.
Okay.
But I think something that I've always done is I'm always willing to just give it a try. Is just the best way to put it. Like, what's a concept recently? Like recently about sidelaning, earlier in the split, when I was still learning more from like watching like specifically caps, I was like staying in side lane too much. So now we're talking more about like dragging me to the mid lane. And so even though I didn't agree with it at the time, I would just like walk mid. I just random timers and just see what works. Mm-hmm. So I think even when I don't understand concepts, I'll just like trust that my teammates or coach that like says it's true. You know, like they're like some of them are extremely experienced players, so you know they probably have some merit to what they're saying. So I'll at least give it a go, and if I don't like it, I'll talk with them after. But I think that's kind of my mindset.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
I could say it.
that
I think
sounds
that's
pretty
like
elegant.
the hardest part. That sounds like the hardest part for most people, because I mean, even in my playing career, I think that I was stubborn as well. But a lot of times, like if people had ideas that like didn't make sense, it was very hard to get like myself to do something that like I just didn't understand. Or like if they couldn't articulate why something was good, and it was just like they wanted me to do it, it was very hard for me to like as a player try it. It's like I had to like understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And there's definitely a lot of merit in just trying things and like just trying to like at least do it and do it wholeheartedly. Because another problem that a lot of teams have is that like you'll try other ideas, and like I remember this in scrims all the time. You'll try somebody else's idea, but you could tell that people aren't really trying your idea. If you have an idea, people are like half-assing it in order to get their way. And I feel like this is like such an issue that you get into. It's like, bro, like, are you really trying my idea, or are you just doing what I'm saying just so you can say, oh, it's horrible? You're like inting it on purpose to say that it's horrible and then like sabotaging the situation.
We call that protesting here on Team Liquid.
Yeah.
If you like half commit to a play and like you're like just trolling just to get it over with, like you'll just be called out in the review. Like the amount of times Spawn has just feel like, stop fucking protesting my game's API.
I like the protesting, man. I like the protesting.
But I can give you an example. Like a month ago or so, I was playing. Actually, not even a month ago. It was whenever Chovy put out Draven mid, so like 2 weeks ago or whatever. Mm-hmm. Someone was playing Draven mid. Someone was playing Draven mid into scrims into me, and I was playing Corki into Draven. And I told the team like early on, just be like hard losing, and I ended up like smashing the matchup because then we mid laner played poorly. But we came into the game, and Core was telling me we should go into early 1-1. I'm sure you've watched a bunch of our games where I'll just like either end up bot lane or end up top lane at like 7 or 8 minutes, and like we change up our laning phases. So Core tells me that he wants to do this early on and he'll call it. But since I'm smashing the Draven lane, Core called it, and I like denied it in game. So me and Core had a conversation for like 10 minutes afterwards, and we're going back and forth for 10 minutes. He's saying why that's good, I'm saying why it's bad. And at the end of the conversation, I just told him, Core, I don't really like believe what you're doing or believe what you're saying is right, but next time you see it, just call it and I'll go for it. And we'll just see how it goes. So I think that's kind of just my mindset. Even if I'm not agreeing with it, I'll at least try it. And I'll try not to protest as long as I'm like not tilted.
I'm curious in terms of those type of relationships, because now you've played with Coach JJ for longer than a year. Did it start at the point where you had an extreme amount of respect for the pedigree, or was it just over time that Coach JJ is right a lot and he's putting in the effort? How did those like relationship develop for you? Was it tied to these two are world champions, or how did it pan out? Was it trial to failure?
I think both. Like, I respected Core, like specifically Core, a lot, because obviously he's a world champion, just like a great resource. But then over time, he just kept continually helping me out and being just like insanely useful. Like at Worlds, for example, he would sit behind me while I'm like 1v1ing like Harry or some of the other Worlds mid laners, and would just be like, "Why are you doing this? On this time you should do this. On this time you should do this," and just like actually just greatly helping me out. Like even in like straight up 1v1 practice for mid laners. So I'm just sitting to myself and I'm like, wow, what the fuck? How does he know all this stuff? Like even when I'm the mid laner, I'm supposed to be better at him than laning mid. Like, why does he like know more of these concepts than I do? So it's definitely both. Like, yeah.
Oh, that's insane. Like Coach JJ is like, we were fortunate back in 2022 when we went to Worlds North America. Like he subbed in for us because our support was stuck in Europe because he had COVID, and he just subbed in. And he was like calling everything in game. Like we just took him like off vacation, you know. He just came in. He's like, "Oh, I can join. I can play. No problem." He just comes in, tries harder than any other player that is at the World Championship, screaming, you know, tries harder, calls more. And I just felt so sad because you're like losing the games of scrim against like RNG, I think DRX maybe. We're just getting fisted, and CoreJJ is tryharding for his life and like trying to drag 4 players that are at the World Championship. Somehow he's trying hard, and 4 of these fuckers that are competing at this tournament, and it was driving me insane. But at the same time, I was so impressed with this man. I'm curious, APA. I can imagine, at least from outside, like this is just speculation, right? Because you joined the main roster, and working with Pure Summit and so forth. Was CoreJJ like your pillar that kept you within the team, or how did everything? How was that dynamic for you, considering like the language barrier and you just jumping into it in the middle of course, the season?
Well, so the way it worked was they would just speak Korean in game, and then when it would come to like mid game rotations or like rotations of any sort, if we're like gonna fight Dragon or a Rift Herald at the time, I think it was. Yeah, Rift Herald. They meant Rift Herald. They would just Core would just translate it to me. He'd be like, "Yo, APA, we're gonna fight Dragon here in a minute. Make sure you're ready." And that would basically be the conversation. And yeah, I mean, it was hard for there to be any other dynamic because Summit's PO6 English was okay, but most definitely not fluent. So it was very hard to talk with them in game. So anytime I'd have to like ask something, I'd be like, "Yo, Core, can you ask PO6 this?"
Nice. Did you feel like there was do you feel like there was a hierarchy within the team? Because I think that this is a lot of the situations that you end up in if you like end up in one of these teams. It's like mainly Korean. Did it feel like it was like, oh, like Summit and Pioshik and Core were just like above the 2 NA players because you guys were younger, you guys were rookies? Or how did the dynamic feel within the team? Because it felt like, you know, from the outside, we obviously saw tweets and stuff later on, which I'm sure we'll get into. But like, what was the dynamic within the team? Was there some type of like Korean hierarchy?
I would say there was. I'm not like totally sure because it's hard to tell if they're not speaking your language. But
Yep.
It was definitely like me at the very bottom, and then like Jan, and then there's probably like a little bit of a gap, and then it'd be like Core, Summit, Piosik, and then coaches at the top.
Okay.
But there definitely was.
You guys review?
It was
how on earth did you review?
I didn't review. I didn't. The reviews were just in Korean. The reviews were just in Korean, and then so specifically at Worlds, because we brought Spawn to Worlds, I would just go to him and I would talk with him about the game, and then the other 4 teammates would just review in Korean, and we would reconvene at our desk 20-30 minutes later.
Damn. Did you like hear your name? It's like, oh, the Ziggs. You just like Korean word Ziggs. Did you like hear your name or some shit?
Yeah. Yeah. And most of the times it was probably not positive because I was getting my shit kicked in at Worlds, most definitely. So,
yeah. Imagine that be like your first experience in LCS, and you managed with a lot of poise. I always had in the back of my mind that the situation you were thrown into was very, very difficult, but you brought the team to the World Championship. There was like a point in time where, like in the aftermath, it was weird because I had this memory of that Pioshik like shared like harsh words on like the boardroom
LCK
thing. But then I went back, like I like LCK boardroom. I went back and listened to what he said, and it didn't seem so harsh. I just remember like the Reddit thread and whatever, like it was a big drama thing that happened, and I remember like LS defended you and so forth, and it went back and forth. How did you look on that entire situation, and how do you reflect back on your relationship with Pioshik in the aftermath?
Well, mostly I just stayed off social media at that point because I knew I was just greatly getting flamed by everyone, which was probably deserved. I was kind of a pisser at Worlds. But
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really talk with Piosik anymore. Not on like a I hate the guy level. It's just we just don't really talk. I don't think we really built like that big of a connection within the time we played. I mean, we all played for like a month or two together. So it's just our relationship wasn't like we didn't have a super friendly relationship. We were just like kind of coworkers. And then he just went to a different team, so we don't really talk anymore. Nothing malicious though, at least from my end.
Well, I mean, the next person to ask about is definitely like Summit, right? Because I think that was the different situation, because obviously there was that like LS MNS drama that was going on, and then in the middle of it, like for no reason, Summit just like came out and he's like, "There's nothing I could do at Worlds with a Ziggs one trick," and everyone was like, "What the fuck, bro? Like you're just like tweeting this shit out?" Like he just literally like fired it off randomly, and then he just like deleted it, and then later on, you know, like he like made a joke, he had some self-deprecating joke, blamed himself when you started to perform. But like, what was that like? Because that seemed very like strange that he would just fire off such a like direct shot at you.
It was pretty random. I remember I just wake up one day, I check my phone, I have like 20,000 DMs from people on Discord. They're like, "Why the fuck is Summit flaming you?" Blah 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 blah. I like check the DMs, and I mean, I don't know. I didn't really reach out to him about it. I just like accepted it as it was, and then yeah.
Did you feel any like happiness when he was sent to LLA? Or did you like, is that anything? Is that like he might be back next year, so you maybe gotta be careful, you know, so who knows.
So we had a joke on our team, like even on our team now, if we ever start playing poorly, Spawn will always joke that he's gonna send us to R7. So it was just very funny that he actually ended up on R7.
Send you to R7, man. Jesus. I mean, R7, like they could be one of the teams that comes into North American or like America's North and then the next year, so you never know.
Yeah.
Really. I'm curious, like in the aftermath, I think everything panned out the best for you. Piosik has occasional series where he plays well over in the LCK, specifically against Genji twice for some reason. He just hates Canyon, I guess. I'm curious because you said yourself, your words, that you were a pisser at the World Championship. In terms of like the things that you felt that you needed to improve on and work on the most, the feedback you got from Spawn, Core, and then Rainover, I imagine. What were the main things that you felt that you needed to improve on, and what was the main takeaways from your first international event?
To be honest, I didn't really have takeaways. I was kind of just happy to be there. That's the honest take. Like I definitely did learn things from streaming the good players, but it wasn't nearly as big as a takeaway as it was from going to MSI. Because at MSI, I feel like I actually learned a tremendous amount. But going to Worlds, I was definitely just like going in there, waving my hand, just happy to be there.
All right. I guess that moves us to MSI. I think the sidelaning portion, pretty damn obvious. What were the takeaways from MSI? Let's hear it, because LEC needs some backup. They need some help, bro. Give us some takeaways, man, that we can send over in DMs to the players that are currently suffering and making our eyes bleed.
I think I did learn a tremendous amount. Like, examples I can give is learning how to apply more pressure with sidelaning. That being just like playing fog, and then like we call it putting your shoulder in, like going into the jungle and just like clearing the vision out, making them pretty much just have to guess if you're going mid lane or going side lane or base lane or doing whatever. And then other things like for example, Mickey. We scrimmed G2 like 3 or 4 times, I think. We called Mickey the bluff king, because Mickey would just like run into your jungle as Nautilus or Poppy or Leon or whatever he was playing, and he'd be like, holy shit, is Yike behind him, is Broken Blade behind him, is everyone behind him? And then you look at a God view, and he's just in there 1v4, and you're like all running away scared. And so we had to learn like bluffing concepts from Mickey specifically. When I faced top esports, even though we got shit on, what Cream did a lot to me, because I actually went like even in lane versus Cream in like all the games, I think. He would like 2 or 3 of the games. But then he'd always get like a massive goal lead on me from like the 12-minute to 15-minute mark, and I would just like watch how he played those minutes, and he would always just like TP to a side lane when we would fight the second grubs or the first Rift Herald, and I would be like, oh, so that's how he gets those leads, and like his team is just like stalling us out when we get grubs, stalling us out when we get Rift Herald, and the entire time he was like specifically he was playing Corki in those games. He was just taking our bot tier 1, even taking our bot tier 2 in some circumstances, and we're just like not getting grubs. We're losing bot turret. He's going up so much gold. We're not getting any gold, and we're just losing the entire map. And like, so I just learned like those are just 3 points where I can instantly think of where I learned. But there's just a ton of other small things where like I 1v1 caps a lot, so I learned a lot about laning phase and stuff. Like hopefully I taught him a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm. So you're to blame for what Caps is doing right now in the LEC? Like I don't know if you saw today's series. Like he got all that from you. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't think I was teaching him much as year. So
okay.
maybe that's not on me.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of other smaller things that I can probably think of within time. But those 3 things are like the most specific things to me that I can think of where I'm just like, wow, like this is so easy to implement into your game, but then not many other people are doing this.
I feel like from watching you guys, once again, from a coach's perspective from outside, it seems like you guys have had like a steady progression throughout. And I noticed now, because I remember watching one of your interviews where you call the concept dribbling, which is like you basically, for everyone out there, it's like you guys are just tethering to the opponents.
And you waste their time.
Contest, waste the time so anyone can push. And I noticed this as well in some of your games in the best of threes after MSI, where pretty much you guys with confidence were like contesting with 4, and then one person would just keep pushing. Your teammates would know that they could win the fight, and there was no like panic and TP as you see in like maybe lower end teams where it's like, oh, the fight is happening, I'm going to TP no matter what, because that's like the reflex. And you seem to have like names, because you said you also cut your shoulder in. Or maybe I'm saying that wrong. Is this how you guys basically frame your practice? Are you guys like focusing on specific concepts, naming them, and then applying them in game verbally, or is this just something that has randomly happened, or is this like a part of the process?
I think it's both. Like for certain team comps, you need to do certain things very well. Like for example, like when you play Ivern, like Ivern's really bad at playing the map big. Like you go side lane as Ivern to try and 2v2, you're probably going to lose that 2v2 because he just fucking sucks at that. But when you bring Ivern mid lane, you drop bushes, you drop Daisy down, like he's so OP in those scenarios. So it just depends on like the team comps you have. So like when we have an Ivern team comp, you know, we have to group mid a lot. So it's based off like pushing our side lanes out and like how often and how fast we can group mid. Or if we're like when I'm on Tristana, like then it's like about giving Tristana as much gold. So like we'll use the dribbling concept that we have, and then I'll just be balling pushing while they're contesting Rift Herald and stuff like that. So we definitely do have a lot of concepts that we think about, and then we just try to apply those concepts as best as we can within each specific team comp we have.
Yeah.
Okay. As a follow-up then, do you guys actively figure this out real time in game, or is it something that is like predetermined because you guys have like now your system is different, right? Because in the BO1s, I imagine it was a little bit more simple, but now with the best of threes, you need to be adaptable real time. Is this something that just happens in game, or is it like planned ahead of time, or is it like a mix of both?
I think it mostly just happens in game because we always like the way it works on our team is we generally early game, Umpty will run the early game. He'll say, you know, he'll tell me Eain Raptors respawn at 4:30, have power at 4:30. We're gonna fight Raptors. But then as the game progresses, Core will normally take over. So generally we just like feed all of our information to Core. We'll be like, I'm in this condition to fight. I have TP. I'm like this far from item. I win side lane 1v1 or I lose side lane 1v1. And then Core would just think to himself, you know, try to give us the best plan he can think of that we can do. And then I think it just generally comes within real time within the game, and we've like so practiced within our team comp that like we understand these concepts, and we also just talk a tremendous amount about these concepts within practice and within just like nighttime, 8 or 9 o'clock. Cora will pull me over and like ask me my thoughts here. But it's definitely just real time in game. I don't want to say it's like a set plan because it's not really a set plan. Every game is different. But we'll just call like the concept out. We'll be like, hey, can we group mid because we're playing Ivern? Like it's really good for us to group mid here.
Yeah. I mean, so I have a question about how you guys are able to keep like such a good baseline, because I think that one of the problems that like I've had on teams, and one of the problems I see normally with a lot of teams, I think G2 might be suffering from this right now as well, is that as you try to like add different team comps and just add things to your playbook, as you get better at one thing, the things that you're kind of not practicing as much, you just end up losing those concepts. But it feels like the thing that's different about TL is that you guys have such a good ability to like just play what you guys play well. So it doesn't matter if you're playing 6 games of Corki. If the team leaves up Ziggs and it's a good Ziggs game, you guys just know how to play Ziggs, and you guys will execute on like a Ziggs team comp well. So how does it work with TL? Like, why do you think you guys are able to like retain all the like skill sets that you've built up while adding new ones, as opposed to, other teams where, a lot of times you just see like, oh, they're good at this and they forgot how to do this other thing. It always feels like this, balancing act where you need to play a certain amount of games of your style in order to not lose it while you start adding things on top.
I do think we do lose like our baseline when we are learning new concepts, but we try to introduce new concepts like kind of at the start of the week. So like, like say Monday we play Sunday, we 5 scrim days. We'll try to introduce new concept or like new champions or just like whatever's new within the week at the very start. And we'll just see how it feels. And then if we can see the potential, we'll like try to run with it as much as we can, and just we just continually talk with each other about how we view the game. Like I'll always talk with Umpty about like, hey, I think on this moment in this champion, like this is very easily replicatable. I can always do this on this timer. Like, so we can kill this guy here. Like I'll have Prowl here, blah 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 blah. Or like I'll like put like cycles out of laning phase where like I win here, I lose here. So I think we do lose our baseline, but we just slowly scale it back up as we are learning new concepts, and then just combine it with everything else.
Yeah. I mean, like on that point, so like one thing I've been talking about, this is just something I thought about right now, is you guys have been like 2v1ing a ton right now, and it seems like that has been like a huge advantage that TL has. Like for some reason, you guys just always win a 2v1, which is weird to me because I feel like a lot of times kind of like standardized, where when I watch them in the East, it's like they know which waves to push. Then like they fake base, they cancel a couple times. Then when the wave starts like thinning out, they'll actually base, rotate, like the team that's top lane will rotate their bot lane bot. The enemy top laner will TP. The top laner that was there the first time will like just have TP advantage, but he'll be down like a little bit of experience, and then like you'll just be laning from that point on. But it seems like you guys always get like ridiculous advantages. It's like Impact is just killing them like 1v3. Okay, nice. Now like now they're just up a level and a half on top lane for the rest of the game, or something like this. Do you feel at any point, like because you guys have 2v1 so much and it is like a clear advantage from you guys right now in the LCS, do you feel like this could like potentially hurt you later on if it goes back to standard laning or something like this? Because it feels like I'm not getting to see you guys like play the actual lane phases too much, and like the standard games where you have, I guess, less information in a way.
So we don't actually lane swap that much in scrims. We don't just like, it's very like we still do every once in a while when it's like either we want to practice something for whatever reason, but generally in scrims we lane pretty, we just like lane. It's kind of just like, I think we're so practiced in lane swaps right now that we don't really need to practice it in scrims. So I'm not too worried about that thought process, that we're just gonna like, if lane swaps end up being killed, I don't think we're gonna forget how to lane, because I would say at least like 80% of games in scrims were just laning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious in the direction of for both of you guys, because there's like always the conversation of like imports coming over to LCS. They're good for one split, and then all of a sudden like the NA SoloQ begins to sink in. The beach lifestyle, the sun, the good food, the burgers, everything begins to sink in, and then level drops. Somehow on your end, when I remember looking at like Team Liquid, you guys are pumping out solo queue games as far as I know. I remember watching you guys as well in comparison to like FlyQuest. When I was watching you guys at like MSI just tracking solo queue, you guys were grinding the shit out of it. FlyQuest was like playing almost no games. In terms of the value you guys can extract from solo queue and the truth behind it, because I'm solo build, like solo queue build as fuck. I know Dom is as well. It's like high elo should be the standard, grinding game should be the standard. How different is the experience from NA solo queue, and how much truth is there in these excuses that people like to put out that NA solo queue just sucks, it's a waste of time, blah blah blah?
No, I'm a big solo queue hater. I definitely play. I think I play the most amount on my team, but I'll probably also complain the most amount on my team. I was talking to Spawn like in DMs like a week or two ago. I was like, man, no NA pros other than Roamer and who's the other guy? Like, I think it's Quid. Like Roamer and Quid are pretty much the two like pros that I only see in solo queue. Everyone else is just like I never see Jojo anymore. I never see Quad. I never see like Insanity. I never see like I've saw Palafox a little bit recently. Who else? Like I see Mask a little bit as well. But to me, like the biggest thing is I just don't see mid lane pros specifically play solo queue. So it's hard to get good practice. So recently I've kind of just been like limit test king. If you look at any of my accounts, like I just dropped like a 12 death game in Syndra and won the game. I was like 12-12. I'm just like permanently limit testing. And that's like one of the conversations I had earlier with Umpty, where Umpty is just completely flaming me. He's like, you're inting every solo queue game, you have bad mechanics right now on scrims and on stage. So I told him like recently I'll be trying my best in solo queue. I'll be like a 2-3 death gamer. And I kind of failed that today. 12 deaths in your game. But the practice is definitely a lot lower quality, like mechanically, and there's just some cringe characters that exist within NA solo queue because everyone is super passive. That makes it a lot different than pro games. Like I'm sure Dom knows, but like there's like 5 Seraphine one tricks in NA high low.
Cupic runs the server, bro. You can't win against this guy. I think this guy is 100% win rate. I've never seen Cupic lose a game.
There's just so many like randomly cringe like Seraphine, Sona, just like super scaling picks that would just never work for good players, but everyone just plays so passive in any solo queue, and then there's just not that many pros that play. I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago. It was 2 days ago, where I had my first all 10 pro game, and like probably this entire year. It was like one of like I probably put like close to 1,000 games of solo queue this year, give or take. I think it's my only game of 10 pros I've had.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would say that from my experience, like playing in solo queue, like there's a max level of NA solo queue games that is just lower than any other server. Like when you get like the best solo queue game you can get, where you're literally playing versus like people that are rank 1, whatever, it doesn't hit as hard as like when you play, for example, on EU. Like when I was playing in EU, if you get a challenger game that's like top of the ladder, you'll feel like a skill difference, where it's like, oh, this is like a real game. But I feel like NA has a cap. But a question that I had for you about like solo queue is how exactly you approach it now, because you're somebody who like I consider like one of the people that conquered solo queue in a way. Like I feel like if you wanted to get rank 1, you can get it anytime. Like you know how to win solo queue as opposed to like play to improve. So like how do you find the happy medium? Because like you always want to be high rated. Like obviously it feels like shit to be lower rated than you believe you should be. But at the same time, you know, like you want to play things that you're scrimming with. You want to play for like LCS. So like how do you draw the line right now with like your solo queue practice? Like to, you know, not just lock in your fucking Ziggs or just not lock in Talia and just roam the entire fucking game. Like how do you figure out what the happy medium is where you can stay super high rated, but you also are just like playing what you think you need to play?
Recently I've just been spamming new characters that I'm not that good at within the game. Like, I mean, you've watched me for a long time. I'm not really a Lucian player, not really a LeBlanc player. Both those characters are like kind of popping up within, or especially Lucian, less so LeBlanc, are popping up within the meta. Like both my solo queue accounts are just filled with like Lucian, LeBlanc, and Aurora right now. just because those characters are new within the meta. So that's currently just what I'm spamming. And then recently, I've just been learning the limits as best as I can, and I'll just like hump the enemy mid laner practically until the jungler comes and kills me. And that's what happens every game. That's why I'm like a 10 death king right now in solo queue.
Yep.
But I think in the next few weeks, I'll definitely try not harder to win, but just like I'll treat it more like a competitive game, so I do die less. So I won't be learning as much limits, but I'll just like try to refine my mechanics, because I'll do like take the feedback Umpty told me. He's called me a mechanical noob right now, and I'll just try to get better at my mechanics and just focus on like those things.
Yeah. I would like to talk to you a little bit about Umpty. Do you feel like Umpty is overly flamed? Because it seems like that's the guy on Team Liquid that everyone's willing to like jump on. Obviously, he had like some pretty crucial ins versus like T1, and people didn't think he played that well at the. Well, I was talking about the EWC T1 series, but also the MSI T1 series. He like didn't have his best series. So like, do you think that there's like something like it seems like from when you talk about him, you have a lot of respect for the guy. I mean, obviously he's been playing for a long time. There's probably ways you look up to him, but do you feel like he's like overly hated? Is there things that we don't see as viewers about like what value he brings to TL?
I mean, for sure. I think excluding international like experiences, because I do think he's had a few bad games at internationals. I think like just overall within the LCS, I don't get why he's not considered the best jungler. Beside maybe like Inspired, I think him and Inspired should be top 2. I don't know.
Not Blabber?
No, sorry.
Okay.
How do I say it? I think he just has such a clear game plan, especially for me within the game, that it makes it so easy for me to play the game. Like he'll just say, he'll go, Eain, I'm clearing up here. You know, like I said, like the 4:30 Raptor timing, and it's not just the 4:30 Raptor timing. He'll like list off like the Gromp timing. He says going to try to invade the Gromp later, or like he's makes it very clear what his plan is and tries to incorporate me or Impact or Yon and Core. So it makes the early game just so like so smooth to play. I think
so he is
like early
General Umpty. Like that is not
no,
just
he's
a meme.
yeah, he's actually just the general Umpty. Like I think I've gotten better laning, John's got better laning, and like Impact's just rock always. But I think just our entire game is just so easy to play in the early game, just because we know exactly where the enemy jungler is, we know what the enemy jungler is probably trying to do, and then we know what Umpty's trying to do, and Umpty's always trying to fuck the enemy jungler. And then instant Umpty gets like the smallest lead, he'll just go, guys, the enemy jungler is fucked, just listen to whatever I say, we're gonna win this game.
Perfect. I like that. So, I mean, the follow-up there is like you discluded Blabber when I was like, oh, what about Blabber? I mean, this guy is, for me, like jungle goat of NA. Like, I'm not saying he's the best right now, but I think he is like the best jungler we've ever had. Tell me why Blabber is not as highly, as high on your list as Inspired and Umpty.
I think for Inspired, I think Inspired is just an insane carry player right now. You know, like if you give him the Lilia or the Brand Desire, like whatever AP jungler he feels is best, and you give him a lead on those characters, like I've seen so many games specifically in scrims where he just like ends up 10 CS per minute on the AP junglers and just completely 1v9s the game, and it feels like so impossible to play against. And then I've given my reason why I think Umpty is good. I think just the reason I don't think Blabber is as good is because I think I don't think he's bad, by the way. I'm not trying to like completely shut up Blabber. I don't think Blabber's bad. I just think he has tremendously good laners, and he plays a very farm-heavy style. And I don't think that's I don't want to say not the best way to play, because it is a very good way to play when you have good laners. I just don't think he would be as good as if he was on like Shopify, for example. I don't think he's going to like 1v9 on Shopify. But I think if you put Inspired or Umpty on Shopify, I think they're going to like immediately boost that team up.
Okay, I can kind of see that. I don't know who you put Dom, but I put Blabber as the best performing jungler in the first 7 best of 3s. Where do you place the junglers, Dom?
I mean, for me, I think Inspired is like I really like the way Inspired plays the game. I feel like this guy makes very logical decisions. He makes like not many things that I would consider like jungle mistakes. Like I'm kind of like a purist when it comes to like jungling. Like I just want to see like good efficiency. I want to see like people, just take objectively good fights. Like, are you playing around the right lane at the right time? And I feel like Inspired does that the best out of like everyone. I think where he lacks is like sometimes, the other junglers will outclutch him or something. Or if like the game is really bad, like if people are like really fucking running it, or the game is really bad quality, I feel like sometimes Inspired won't capitalize on like all the little things that present themselves because like he just won't put him in a spot that doesn't make sense. So maybe he's not the best at recovery, but in terms of like just raw jungling, I think he's like the best one to me. And then after that, it's really hard for me to say because like I guess my criticism of is I feel like he's not as good on the carry junglers. When I watch him play, it feels like it's Ivern, Maokai, Sejuani. Like this is like if he plays this and TL has 80 mid, they have Maokai, Sejuani, whatever, and Impact's playing weak side and they lane swap and Yon's on a carry and they get into their side laning and they start just playing the map. I think every other team is fucked when they play against TL. But if, like, for example, the Lilia game that played yesterday, I mean, just like the 2 deaths at the beginning of the game, that's why I have him as third. It's like when I see those deaths, I'm like that just doesn't work. Like, you know how APA just said if you put like on Shopify, like he's gonna be like 1v9ing. If you do that shit on Shopify, you can forfeit the game, bro. Like that game is over in like 15 minutes if you do that bullshit. If you try the solo Raptor invade, like you just don't get a chance to play anymore.
I do agree. I did ask him after the game. I asked him what he was thinking in that level 1 Lily invade because I was like, I thought in the back of my head, I don't like cheesing first. Well, we didn't know it was worded. I thought at the back of my head, I don't like to cheese for sports teams because I feel like we're just gonna naturally win as the series goes on. We don't need to like cheese out wins.
Variants.
So I wanted to tell him within the game, like at like 1 minute or whatever, we don't need to cheese. Like we're better than these guys. We're gonna win anyways. But I thought to myself, he's the jungler. He probably knows swimming more than me in this matchup. He's gonna do this, can completely shit on them, and then like 10 seconds later, he just fucking ends.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is like.
So it's your fault then.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. I should have fucking pulled the leash. Come here, boy.
I can say what I like about Blabberoni. I think Blabber, at least in my mind, I think what stands out for me with C9 is in terms of how they fight together. I feel like Blabber has really impressed me how he plays like just team fights. I remember like brand games that stood out. I think like he had like solid mid-league performances. I think just mechanically, I found his execution to be quite satisfying because I think that's where, in my mind, the strength of C9 is if they get to the points like 20 minutes in, 25 minutes in, when there are in team fights, I feel like he fits the identity of what I place C9 at. I think my main criticism, because I'm like the opposite of you, Dom, is like I feel like Inspired is too precise. Because I remember like
I love the precision.
It's like he's too precise, and games tend to get dirty, especially with like the teammates he has. And I can see he is so headstrong in his decision making, which can be very, very good. You dip inters and you try to like cut through the game and do your own shit. I think there's definitely like a place for that. But as you said yourself, it's like there's moments where I would like him to adjust, do the level 3 gank, do the cheeky thing where he like maybe starts enemy blue, just add a little bit of a leg kick into his boxing, like if he could do that, because it's a fucking street fight out there, like if he added that layer, I remember like that version of Inspired when EG won like the split. I remember like that's when he was like very, very creative. But I think probably he really, really tunes into the mindset of the champion he plays, because I remember like his breakout split was him playing fucking Udyr and becoming 100 CS ahead and doing that no matter what, never pivoting and like grinding out games. So I guess it's just a question of like him being in tune with his champion no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, it feels to me, it's like when I look at Inspired, I'm like, if everyone was playing perfect, he would be like one of the best jugglers like ever. If everyone was playing perfect all the time, like he would just be insane, which obviously clutch factor and stuff like that is a huge part of jungling. But I just like the way he plays pretty much every champion. I feel like he does really well on like adjusting his mindset in between different champions. Like he knows how to play like a low econ style. Like if he needs to for a game, like he knows what his champion needs to do to succeed.
He's got a really good Sidelaning.
Yeah, I mean he is a really good Sidelaning. He is like he's kind of good at everything. Like he's kind of good at every like type of jungler. I don't think there's no meta that could happen in the LCS. Like if we ended up in Lee Sin meta, he's completely fine at like Lee Sin. Lee Sin's good. If we ended up in Xinjiang meta, he can play that. Like he can play every single thing. It's just that like people just hate this guy so much that I'm like I almost feel bad saying this. People are gonna be like fuck Inspired, like he's a piece of shit. Like for some reason, just the way he talks, he's kind of like he's like APA but not likable. Like APA has that like likable quality to him. Like Inspired is the same way, but like you feel like Inspired's an asshole when he like talks his shit. So like I just feel like everyone just kind of like hates his gameplay kind of because of who he is.
I think it's all the vegans rising up, bro. Like they're offended, bro. They're using their thing as it's an insult.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I think maybe he's pro veganism, just not on the Rift. You know,
maybe. I'm kind of curious on this topic because I imagine it's like, oh, that you always get asked, like, oh, well, how do you think of the trash talk, whatever. But what I'm curious about is how the fuck does it feel when it's like basically the whole branding of the league has been pretty much structured around what you do. Does that make you feel some type of way? Did it affect you in any shape or form, or is it kind of like, okay?
It didn't affect me that much. I kind of just like when we were doing like the hype videos and stuff at the very start of the split, and they told me it was going to be like a talk your split thing. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like what I've been doing this entire last split, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of cool that I've become like kind of synonymous with like the theme of the split, but it like people say some of my trash talk is forced. I think the theme of the split is very like forced. Whenever anyone types anything, it's just like tweeted. Well, that was just like kind of my thing, or like kind of even like a little before like JoJo's thing, when JoJo would type a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask you about JoJo just in general, because it feels like whenever like people interview you and like whenever I hear you talk, it seems like JoJo is the guy you think is like the best. Like if outside of yourself, like it seems like you have the most respect for JoJo as a player. What were people like not really seeing about his gameplay come like playoffs, for example? Because for example, when you had your face to face, right? You pretty much said that like you thought it was the rest of his team inting and that he was still fine. But like when I was watching the games, it really felt like JoJo is just having like a horrible like series. So like, what do people not see about JoJo? You think he just like sometimes forces things when he knows the game's in a bad state, or why do you think that it is that JoJo was looking so off in that playoffs, or like why people don't see him the same way as you do?
Well, I think the reason I respect him a lot is just because of his laning prowess. Like he's definitely a very insane laner. I know, like watching today's game, he got shit on by Quad.
He ran it down.
But like for the most part, he's actually very good at laning. Like I would consider him the closest of the NA mids to any of the Eastern mids that are really good at laning. Yeah. I don't think he's on their level, but he's like, you can at least compare him. Whereas like some of the other LCS mids, like you can just float by on.
Yeah.
But I think in the last playoff series, it's just, well, I think the word gaps other word. I think where he struggles is just outside of lane. Like, I think his mid-game portion, he becomes nowhere near as aggressive as he is in lane. Like in lane, he's like such an aggressive player. You give him an inch, he's gonna take a mile type of player.
Yep.
But like when it comes to side laning, he's like never like. When's the last time you saw JoJo like kill someone in the side lane 1v1?
Yeah, like never.
It's just never. He's just like very, I don't want to say passive, but just like doesn't take that like mind game risk. Yep. Like ever.
Do you think that,
so I think that's where a lot he struggles.
Do you think that's knowledge based? Like he just doesn't know what to necessarily do in the side lane, or like why do you think that is?
I think it's probably a little bit knowledge, because it is hard to learn that stuff. Like I think he probably did learn a little bit when he was with Impact, but then I stole impact now, so now I'm like he doesn't really have that resource anymore.
Yeah,
but I think it's also just a mindset thing as well. Like you have to be willing to look like you're fucking terrible and just die in the side lane, to also be willing to get that solo kill in the side lane. It's like the same mindset, and I just don't think he has that part switched on. So even when he does get leads, it feels like if you can stall him out in laning phase, then you can just very easily stall him out through the rest of the game. And obviously you still have to play well and like team fight well and etc. and still play the rest of the game. But it just feels so easy to stall the game out, and then he'll make just a mistake like on his own, and he'll do something kind of stupid.
It's on brand for Jojo, to be honest. That's how he portrays himself, to be like, he seems like he'd be like cool, like good, something just every now and then is just not perfectly there. But yeah, I feel like you want to ask Yamato, I see the look.
No, I just wanted to mention, like, because you mentioned the face-off, and the portion I enjoyed the most was when APA really tried to make Jojopyun admit that he's a choker. And he got stuck in such a hole where he couldn't really call himself a choker or just say that his team is bad. Yeah, I just had him on the ropes. I really enjoyed that portion of it. It was kind of.
I think the biggest, to answer your question a little bit more, Dom, I think the biggest difference is when I faced, like, specifically Caps. I'll keep bringing him up because I did learn a tremendous amount from MSI. Like, when he would go into side lane as like Tristana or like LeBlanc or any of these side lane characters, you would be so scared he's actually just like straight up going to 1v3 you. Like the amount of times he would like 1v3 us in the side lane and just completely fist us is just insane. But then I've never had that like same feeling against Jojo that I do against Caps, where I'm never scared he's gonna like be cheesing me in a bush somewhere and just like Tristana jump me from fog and just solo kill me. It's always just like he's gonna push this wave and probably group with the team to fight. He doesn't have that same like pressure that he just doesn't have that same pressure.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that we brought up in the SAC yesterday, because we were talking about like how Caps is kind of has that final layer of side laning, because you could like, I feel like the basic thing about side laning is just knowing when to go to the side lane and then just knowing which waves you can push and which waves you can't. And the talk that we're bringing up is like, you don't need to go for like the 1v3s, But one thing that I really like about Caps is it doesn't feel like he takes stupid 1v3s like that often. Every now and then it's dumb, but it feels like a lot of times when he's taking those 1v3s, it's like on a timer where, even if he dies, he's burning resources. They'll be like before Drake. Yeah, that you like get Baron. There's like something happening on the other side of the map. It always feels like there is like a thought process behind it. It's not just like he just has some, he just wants to 1v3 because he thinks he's so good, which is what I feel like a lot of people see him as. And the topic that we were bringing up was that like you don't need to actually do the 1v3 portion of side laning to be a good side laner. You could do like the consistent part, and you can like choose not to go for those types of plays. But like the willingness to die in side lane at a certain timing is, I feel like, a concept that's really been lost in North America. Because like when we watch LPL, I mean, there's times where just people will go into the side lane. It'll be 2 minutes before Drake. They'll be like, I can get this wave, and maybe if they kill me, they'll just lose something else on the map. I'm just gonna push the side lane blind, and we'll just like see like what the fuck happens. And if people come at me, we'll try our best to outplay. We make the decision if we're gonna burn our flash, try to 1v3 or not. But it's all just like moment to moment. And when you watch NA historically, it's always been so stiff. Like people overgroup because it feels like they just don't want to die, because they don't trust their team to actually use the advantage that they're gaining, like the time advantage, to do something on the other side of the map. But I think it's changing a little bit, this split. It seems like people are getting a little bit better at that. Is this something that like, because you grasp this concept like pretty quickly, or at least it appears you grasp this concept quickly. Was that just Impact? Like you've been saying that like Impact helped you a lot with side laning. Is this something that he's been able to like teach you, or how were you able to like precisely figure this part of the game out?
I think most of it is Impact. Like he helped me get the foundation of side laning, which is just like when to go to the side lane, when to push it out, and like when to go mid lane. Mm-hmm. I think he helped me get that foundation down very well. I still struggle a little bit sometimes, but he'll flame me on it, and I'll be like, yeah, I fucked up here, my bad. But for the most part, I would say I know it pretty well. And then right now, I just feel like I know the current characters, like the current champions, like breakpoints really well.
Yeah.
So I know, like, when I'm on Corki versus Lucian on like 2 items versus 2 items or whatever, I know I'm gonna win if I play it like this well. So I'm like kind of hunting the Lucian in the side lane and willing to just take risks. So like I think he helped me get the first part down, and then the next part, which is just like winning the 1v1s, winning the 1v2s or whatever it is, is just me understanding just the characters to like a very high level, I would say.
Makes sense.
Okay. I really like what you mentioned when you spoke about Jojopyun's weakness, because I think in terms of how you eventually elaborate on how you side lane, the details that matter when you lane are pretty much exactly the same in tune with how you side lane. And I tie it back to what you said, Dom, too, because in the past, like when I saw Bjergsen and Jensen when they were running the region, you know, before Jizuke came over, and like Jizuke was telling me, it's like, bro, no one fucking lanes here, bro. Like no one's laning, no one's trading. People push a wave and then they sit at the turret and they don't do shit. And by extension, it's also how like people side lane. And in my mind, I'm thinking in terms of how the side lane concepts also play out. It's like you leverage your strength against the others, you take calculated risks, you leverage fake pressure, you play on information, you trap, you roam, and you make the enemy play with the mind at all times, and you leverage your strength. Do you believe, APA, in this, that laning is basically the purest form of the game and everything that happens leading up to objectives is just that at a grander scale when it comes to like how you side lane? Or how would you teach this concept to, let's say, a future top laner that you work with in, let's say, a couple of years, when you need to pass on the knowledge?
I think the biggest thing that I would have, in a sense, like teach is just the, like Dom talked about a little bit earlier, but just the willingness to die in the side lane. Because I think right now, if you watch any LCS game, like you choose any of like the 70 that were played in the regular season, if a person that doesn't have vision on their side, it's very, very rare in LCS that they will actively fight.
Yeah, just send it.
Yeah, it's so rare. Like honestly, I'm even like a victim of this as well. Where like yesterday, and I played Corki both games, so it's hard to differentiate the game. Yesterday, Dokla, like it was game 2 because he completely ran that game down. When Dokla face checked me and like the balling Gromp bush and like on our side of the jungle, I like chunked him half HP and Valkyrie'd out. And I look back at the replay and I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck did I run here? Like I completely one-shot this guy if I just like have the balls to fight him. And I just ran away like a bitch. So I think if you just look at any of these games, no one is willing to make aggressive plays without vision.
Perfect
even if you, like perfect information, even if you can like assume where people are. So I think that's just like the biggest thing. Like I still have to work on it myself, given the example. But I think that's like probably the biggest thing I would say is just be willing to die in the side lane. Like
okay. All right. No, I think it makes perfect sense. I think it's like if you in real time you like calculate the odds of the distance the enemy champions need to cover in order to like punish you, and for them to be in that space, it's like when supports need to ward, they need to base, like junglers need to clear camps. Like if they're actively pressuring you at all times, when the odds of them being in that distance of impacting your play when you're stronger is so minimal, it's like I think if players viewed it through that lens, all of a sudden like a door of opportunities just opens up. And if he happens to be there when there's maybe like a 10% chance, it's you're kind of playing like a poker game. Because if you rely on perfect information, especially in the current day and age, you're not gonna make it. And the enemy side laners is gonna steal waves, and you're gonna get suffocated out, and you're going to lose the game regardless of what the condition is in. If you are like a bottom 5 LCS team playing against Team Liquid.
Yeah, like like the example I gave is just the best one. Like if I was just more willing to die, more willing to just be even just a little bit more aggressive, I would have just solo killed Dokla on the spot, and he would have looked like a bigger enter than he was that game. But I was just too scared of dying. I was too scared of making that one mistake that probably wouldn't have even costed us the game because we're up so far that it just slowed the game's progression down by so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that a lot. I mean, I think that the next thing I want to talk about, because I feels like the most interesting part of this episode is going to be just talking about like specific concepts within the game, like for viewers and stuff. So the thing that I would like to talk about next is the team fighting aspects, because this is something that was changed a lot this year from Team Liquid. Like when I think about you guys last year, the criticism that everyone had was that you and Eain were just not good enough carries to be able to take it over the line. So if you guys got into like late game team fights, you wouldn't be able to actually, win the games. Like you needed to win early, and they didn't like the idea that like the best players on the team were like the setup players, and the people that needed to carry later were not good. And this is the criticism everyone had until you guys won the split. And once you guys went to MSI and came back, it seems like you and Eain are just way better at team fighting. Like you guys have much better target selection, like your presence of mind of like what abilities you need to flash and how you want like to play out each fight. It just feels like you have a different mindset. Whereas before it felt like most of the time you guys would get like caught off guard, or it felt very easy to kill like Eain and APA in a team fight last year. So how did you guys get like so much better at the concept of team fighting? And like, is this just you playing more like together with the team, playing with core and impact people that set up fights in really good ways? I think that this is like something that is really like a break point for Team Liquid becoming the best team in the region.
I think this one was mostly actually due to Rainover, our assistant coach, or somewhat head coach, like depending on when it was, because last year he was head coach. He just he makes a lot of presentations for us, and we like produce concepts because he was a pro player before. He still understands the game at a very high level, and he would just show us so many concepts of what he believes should be like the, in a sense, like correct way of team fighting. It would show us like a mouse position, which is just like when you have like a two side flanks and you're like wrapping them, or like we have the concept of like free hit when the enemy tank or whoever is in team just like is getting hit, but then our characters aren't getting hit. We have flanking concepts, we have just front to back concepts, and we just, as just a team, we just talk for like hours upon hours, and he had like a tremendous amount of presentations presenting these ideas to us, and then we would just practice them within our scrims. So I don't think, like I do think me and Jan did get better, but it most definitely wasn't just us. Like I would say a lot of our current team-wide team fighting concepts is produced from Rainover that we just like trusted him on, and we just practiced them.
Okay. I'm curious if there's like some more words that we can extract, because now I'm coming back to the initial thing. Are there certain formations you guys take? It's like, I imagine it's like the way you describe it, it's like you guys make sure that there's like a concave, there's like premium positions, because often it's like bad team fighters, like all players like end up in the same pocket because
in the same line,
the same spells, and they all get hit. But in reality, like maybe the strongest person should be in the premium spot, and you create like kind of a crossfire in the same area when they cross. Are there certain like words that you would tickle my imagination with that are your concepts? Of course, I don't want you to reveal everything. But if you can, please do.
I think the one concept we have is just called like a wing position, which is just, you have your main ball of like 3 or 4 whoever people, then you have the wing position here. I think that's one of our concepts. It's either like, like when I played a lot of Nico, like Nico's a great wing position character. You sit just off on the side, like in a side lane bush, enemy team comes in, you engage a little bit, you suck them in, and then the wing position comes in, you get a pentakill.
Yeah.
And then we have like concept like, we identify that the enemy team has a wing position team comp, and then we'll say,
off the wing.
We'll say we have to break the wing here, and then we'll identify whichever character is in the game. If we have like a Vi Ari, we'll say Vi Ari is like insane at breaking the wing. If we find their wing, we're gonna fucking kill them as Vi Ari.
Yeah, that's something that I love, because it feels like that's the whole game. That's like the real game that's being played when we watch LPL all day. Yamato and us, Yamato and I we're up in the middle of the night. Well, middle of the night for me. It's like morning for Yamato over in EU. But we watch like all the teams, and even the bad teams in LPL like have this concept of like, okay, who's going to be the flanker? Like this is what you're calling the wing position, and they understand exactly like where to like suss them out and how to punish like the wing, because sometimes like you'll have a Corki like that's strong enough in the game that it's just you just send the fucking Corki at the Cannon that's sitting in the wing and he just like one shots the guy like off the wing, and it's like one auto attack and the guy just can't play anymore and the whole game's exploded. And this is something that I feel like these concepts that you're bringing up are the reason why, like when I watch you guys play, I think you guys can beat T1. You know, like you guys play them in a game and you're actually like playing the same game as them when it gets later on into the game, where normally when I watch these types of games, it just feels like there is some point where it's just going to end up all coming apart. But I actually like trust the ability to carry out a lead with you guys because of these types of things. When it comes to teams that you've played against, because I feel like this is like, you obviously haven't had a super long career, but you've had a lot of different experiences. And the team that I've like been comparing you guys to a lot, not comparing you in terms of like you play like them, but just when I talk about player like team skill, is Fnatic, because you guys played against them in I believe 6 games so far, and you've beat them, 5-1. I think it was 3-1 at MSI and then 2-0 at EWC, right? So you guys have 5-1 in 6 games. And it just looks like you guys just can't lose once you get to a certain point macro-wise, because you guys just understand things better than them. What is your experience like with Fnatic? Do you think that they're actually better than how they've showed against you? Or like, do you just feel like there's some like issue with this team? Because we've seen a consistent thing, like how they played against you guys. I know you watch EU. You saw how they played against G2 with their leads, like these insane throws. How is your experience playing against Fnatic?
Well, I can go back to, we scrimmed them, I think once or twice at MSI. And they completely ran us in scrims, by the way. So
shit on you guys?
Yeah, not like shit on. Like we didn't get like 6-0 or anything, but it was like we went like probably 2-4 or something like that. Like we definitely lost the scrim block. So I think the biggest difference I see from them between scrims and stage is just there's no better way to put it other than they choke. Like I think specifically Humanoid and Noah are just like pretty big chokers within the game. I think like in scrims they showcase themselves to be very good players, but then specifically those two guys would just fucking hint at random moments. Like at MSI, I'm like solo killing him as Ace over Sway. Like how does that ever happen? But like in scrims, he was like probably beating me in a lot of lanes.
I saw your reaction, Yamato. What do you think about that? Because I mean, obviously you coach Humanoid.
Bro, I was instantly thinking about that fucking Hui Aurelion Soul moment, because that was like one of the driest fucking solo kills ever, you know? Like,
dry ultium
flash from a gank, and then he just walks up with like half HP and he just dies.
It's just very like boneheaded moments that you see from them. But then from scrimming them, those times, it's like, this wasn't happening in scrims. Like, they weren't dying instance like this easily in scrims. So that's the only way I can rationalize it, from seeing like both sides of the spectrum between them.
Yeah. That's interesting, because it's like different ways to interpret those moments. Like, for example, I see these same moments. There's one that jumps out at me. Yamato knows exactly what moment I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, exactly. He knows instantly what I'm talking about, because I freaked out when it happened during LEC, where he's playing Corki into Talia, and this is like recent. This was, I think, pre-nerf Corki. So this is like the Giga OP Corki.
When he just got solo killed, like level when he just 4 or 5.
Yes, he just gets solo killed, gets flicked into turret, and then he just dies. And when I see moments like that, I guess you interpret it as like, oh, that's like a choke. Like that's a mistake that he normally wouldn't make. Like I've always thought, for some reason when I watch this, it's just like ego. It's like, bro, you're so late. Like it's such a lazy way to die. It's so like disrespectful or like something like this. Like I always view it through that lens. Like Yamato, you got to bring us in since you've actually coached the guy. Like, is it choking? Is it like disrespect over aggression? What do you consider it?
I don't know. It's like my experience with Humanoid is most of the time, like on stage matches, he was extremely, extremely professional. But I know from scrims, like he's a pessimist, a very, very big pessimist, where if he sees something he really doesn't like, he will like silently int. You know, he will like int in a way that is like Da Vinci coded. You know, he'll protest, but in such a silent way, but everyone can feel it. just in the way he doesn't talk and how he takes trades and how he like loses his HP and gets dove and just lets out a little sigh. And I don't know, when I was watching him dying to that Aurelion Soul, I got that feeling, that feeling of, oh, he has no faith in the progress and the potential of that game. And it reminds me of those silent int games. But in most cases, he's on stage. He is he, in my experience, has been a very, very strong professional. So I don't know what happened with Fnatic. Maybe there was signals in terms of how I interpreted from working with signals in the game where he like noticed patterns from his teammates that he would feel is moving towards a losing losing position. Like maybe you heard like something from bot lane, like a specific voice. Maybe like they did this Legends in Action right after the fact where like they pointed out to Noah as like, oh, you're just choking, you're playing bad. And then June was getting tilted when Noah's playing bad, and then he runs it down, and it was like fucking a house of cards built on fucking
it was
paper,
crazy.
and just the Team Liquid win just fucking swooped it down. It just seems to be like such a fragile team on that level, and I think that Humanoid is like the third domino, is how I would like interpret it.
Oh, it was pretty based Legend in Action. I don't know if you got to see that one APA, but it was like they're like asking Jun pretty much. They're like, why did you start playing bad? He's like, I started playing bad because Noah was playing bad, and like essentially what the reasoning was is like he just didn't like it when Noah plays bad. I'm like, okay. I mean, like, I guess some people just don't like when their teammates play bad and just start running it.
That's their like squad, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
I remember. I think I've seen them a few times. I watched their MSI one and I watched their EWC one.
Yeah, the MSI one, like there was a point where he talked about it. And I think this was in the series versus you guys where like they're going backstage and Humanoid was like, yeah, it just feels like we're just playing so safe. Like we're playing so scared in these games. And I wonder if that was part of like why he felt the need to like take these types of trades, just because he feels like there's like some like stiffness in the team. He's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like start sending it or else we're just gonna lose. I mean, there's always that layer. I was curious to ask you, APA, because you've talked a lot about caps. You've talked about G2. I mean, I know you watch Europe based off just like conversations we've had and stuff. So what I would ask you is, from your perspective, why do you think it is that G2 is like performing so poorly right now? I mean, today, the day we're recording this, they just lost to Mad. Their 3-0 in the finals versus Fnatic was probably the worst 3-0 I've ever seen, like the lowest quality 3-0. I don't think I've ever seen a team win 3 games where they were losing that hard before. From your perspective, I mean, you scrimmed them, you got to see them play like really well. I think they released their scrim records. Their win rates were really good against you guys. Is it like what part of it do you think is coming undone for G2 right now?
I think when that team folds a lot, it's kind of like, this is gonna sound funny because they did win 3 games from behind. Mm-hmm. But I think generally when they're not winning a lot of their early games, from what my perspective is on them, it's hard for them to play the way they want to play. Like I gave an example of Mickey being like a bluff king, or like Taz playing like a psycho on side lane, and you don't necessarily know what he's going to do, if he's going to try to 1v1 you or if he's going to be in base or whatever. So I think a lot of that team is like, in a sense, it's based off of like what if mind games that they can play. But then once you fall behind, it's very hard to take those what if mind games. And even though they did win the Fnatic G2 series, like even the one game, I was down like fucking 8k gold or some dumb shit.
Yeah, it was like 10k like 21 minutes. It was crazy.
It just feels like they lost some of their prowess within lanes. And then, like I said, it's just so hard to play like the G2 game or like the G2 style if you're just losing from the start. I think that's kind of like the biggest thing to me, because when I was laning versus, like I was 1v1ing caps, he was like just shit on me at certain points within matchups. But then you see him play now, and even though he's like doing okay, it doesn't feel like he has the same pressure, and it doesn't feel like some of the other players on his team have the same pressure right now. So I don't know, maybe they're just slumping a little bit, because I'm pretty sure they've already made Worlds, or I'm sure they do care. But I don't know exactly what it is, but it just feels like their prowess is like less right now. That's just the best way I can put it.
I think it makes sense, the whole, like, in terms of how they want to play and them creating so much distance from it due to their early, because I think for the last 2 years they've been so, especially I think in terms of how Yike likes to play the early game, they've been so reliant on having like pushing bot lanes. It was also like a big theme in the first best of five they played against Fnatic, where they would win games with like misfortune, where Mickey could just go mid because they would like be pushing bot. And then matches where they weren't pushing bot, they couldn't control the 3v3 on mid. And then it's like, in a way, like everything is tied together, because referencing back to previous years, it was always like the Draven and the Kalista always pushing bot. They play like the Ashe Heimerdinger abusers when it came down to it. And now, like, their bot lane is dying level fucking 1 and level 2. And I think the Ike in that also gets kind of exposed, because there were definitely moments where he got away with way too much in regards to how he likes to play. So I think what you said makes a lot of sense.
Even when you think back to like even just like recently, like MSI, like we're watching Broken Blade play Yasuo and Yike play Lilia, and they're like double killing people top lane versus Eastern teams, or like Mickey on Poppy, and he's like wall banging people when him and Hans are just 2v2 killing the Eastern bot lanes. Or like, I don't know, Faker kind of minted some of his Azure games versus Caps, but like even Caps like solo killing Faker. So like you would see like a whole bunch of that stuff at EWC. So it's just a little bit. I mean, the only word I can say is like confusing how they're smashing like T1 in certain games when T1's such an insanely aggressive team. They're smashing like top esports. Like they ended up beating them, but then they come back and they're just like a lesser version of themselves.
Yeah. No, it's really hard. It's really tough to watch. Like we watch it every week, and we're just always. I think for people like me and Yamato, it's so hard to watch them because you feel like they're so much better than how they're playing that it's like you don't even want to take too much from it. I still feel like they're the team from Europe, right? Like they should be the best team in Europe, even if they end up being the third seed or they, even lose in the next stage or something like that. It just feels like they are the only team that has like the pieces and like the ability to perform at that level. So, yeah, it's pretty frustrating watching like. The fact that they've taken pretty much the opposite trajectory to you guys. Like since you guys came back from MSI, it's like holy shit. Like you guys went from being a 7-7 team. I mean, it was best of ones, right? But you guys were 7-7 in the regular season. Last split to now, you're just dominating everyone. It just feels like a completely different team. And G2 is taking the opposite approach, where it just feels like everything they did well. I mean, like you're just mentioning it, the Yike Lilia. I mean, this is a meta where we're seeing people first pick Lilia. Like you're seeing Asian teams like 1, 2, 3 ban it. Lilia's first picked. You pair it with any of the AD mids, and you're just good to go. I don't think he's played a game of Lilia the entire split. Like he just won't lock in the champion anymore. And this is the best the champion's ever been, and he was playing it all the time. So it is very confusing.
APA, before we jump into LCS conversation of your position and your vision of how you're going to stomp the league in summer, I wanted to ask you the opposite side of the same question of you guys are a team that can definitely like exude this overwhelming pressure on the teams that are definitely weaker than you macro-wise. In your international experience, did you have that same experience scrimming against, let's say, Genji or Billy? Is there any team that stood out to you in terms of, oh shit, we in terms of how they fight or how they approach things? Damn, they are good.
Somewhat, because our scrims at MSI are kind of like, some of them were really good. Like some sets were actually like straight up just beating Genji in scrims, and then some other sets they would just like 6-0 us. So, but I do think Genji is like the biggest one we can think of, where they would just like every other team obviously was still really good at the Eastern team specifically. But if you were to make like even just a couple mistakes for Genji, the entire game just felt like it got vacuumed away from you. Like you would just get completely suffocated, and then like it felt like every play was a do or die. And then if you mess up one time, you just FF15. Mm-hmm. So I think they were the biggest ones about that. Like every other team we scrimmed, like we were at least able to, for the most part, like at least most of us were able to go like even in laning phase, depending on the team. And then like we would be able to like win games through side lane or win games through mid game sequences and stuff like that. But Genji specifically was like the biggest one where it was just like, holy fuck, these guys are good.
Do you have any game where you like shit on Chovy? Do you have any game where you just had a like solo kill on Chovy or anything that you felt like really good about?
Not one that comes to mind. I do think I killed Chovy in one-on-ones, but it wasn't like me killing him. It was like more so him just like
himself?
him killing himself and like trying to do something stupid in scrims. So it was more of one of those moments. So it's like it still feels a little bit good to say you can kill Chovy, but then you look at it, it's like it looks like you're in an LCS game or something.
Oh, okay. Like you're in an LCS game, damn.
Totally. Everyone's gonna take that and say Chovy ints too, so I can int too.
Even Chovy
Everyone's
ints.
gonna run away with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's perfect.
I did mention the LCS. I actually had one more thing that crossed my mind. Forgive me, AP. It's 4 a.m., so I'm a bit of a scatterbrain.
You're fine.
Over here. I wanted to ask before we jump into the current day and age. You guys made a fucking miraculous fucking change up coming into like spring playoffs. I didn't expect you guys to make it. I rated Eain pretty poorly. I thought you guys were struggling. I thought in the best of fives that when you guys had to make the run through lower brackets, I thought you guys were underdogs the entire way. What the fuck clicked so hard to make you guys just fucking stomp everybody and then just make this, like you guys changed the perspective of everything after that run, and then MSI. All of a sudden, you guys are the top dogs, and everything just changed. What the fuck happened internally?
Well, I think a few things happened. I think firstly, it was just I just actually just got better throughout the split. Like the very start of the split, even just like the end of that split, I was definitely just two different players. So like I even tweeted about something today where like in spring I was probably losing like most or majority of the lanes, but now in summer I'm like winning pretty much every lane. So I think just as a player wise, I got better. So that obviously makes the game easier if you go from having a losing lane all the time to having a winning lane. But I think as like a team wide, I think something just clicked within us where we went from being one of the most passive teams to one of the most aggressive teams within the LCS. And I think it just happened within like a week of scrimming, like all 5 players just like turned the switch, like we flipped the knob or whatever you want to call it, and we just instantly just started taking much more fights. We were much more willing to die, and yeah, because our scrims were always very chaotic, but then you'd watch us on stage, and we were just going like 1 kill a minute, would only fight on objectives or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly we're always just taking like 2v2s, we're taking 1v1s, etc. I think that's just like the biggest thing. We just were much more willing to fight, and we finally grasped all like these concepts that we're talking about earlier, and everything just like kind of clicked at once for us, from what I would say.
Okay. Yep. Well, was it like a catalyst? Like, did Spawn shout at you? Did Radar have the craziest presentation? What was like the catalyst? Was it like something said or like a specific meeting? Does there something comes to mind?
I think for me specifically, it was it was one of our scrim games, and me and Umpty took a 2v2, and I just completely bitched out of the 2v2. Like I didn't end up taking it because I was like too scared we're gonna die, or like too scared we're gonna lose or whatever. And then I talked to Umpty about it after, and Umpty's like, "Why the fuck did you run away here? We're gonna win this." Like he points out how like he was literally like, we're like breaking. He says, "We're gonna play it this way. Like you're gonna flash this spell. I'm gonna flash this spell. I'm gonna ulti this guy. We're gonna win pretty much." Mm-hmm. And I just thought to myself, why was I such a bitch here? It's just the only way I could think about it. I just thought to myself, wow, I played this so scared. And I think like that, like you said, catalyst. I just went, man, in most of these games I'm actually just playing like a bitch. I have to stop being a bitch. It's the only way I could put it. And so I just started.
Title of the episode. I just started fighting so much more.
I just started fighting.
Yeah.
I think that's happened to our entire team, by the way.
Oh shit!
Yes.
So everyone just conquered their inner bitch. It's like when
Yeah.
Gilius complains about his. It reminds me of Gilius. He said to me when I work with him, "It's like, Yamato, I have bitch tits. I need to fix this." and then he changed, and then he started playing better somehow.
Yeah, Gillies has
That's
stories
wild.
with his bitch tits. I mean, there's like a level of confidence that it seems like you guys have where you'll take fights and it's just like you expect each other to play the fight well.
Yeah.
Where when I watch a lot of teams, there's like not that expectation. Like people are just trying to like do their own thing, but it feels like you guys opt into a fight and it's like we're fighting and everyone just knows that like they're gonna do their own thing and it's not even like this over focus on like, oh, is this winning, losing, whatever. It's like we're fighting now. Just play the best you can, and you know we'll make the right decision after the fight, regardless of what happens, which I like to see out of you guys a lot. So we're gonna end on LCS, but before we end on LCS, let's talk a little bit about Spawn as a coach, because you have this guy that it seems like everyone respects. Like when you just talk to anyone in the LCS, it seems like your whole team respects him. Everyone just like says that he's got this real coach energy, this dad energy, and you know he's talked a little bit about how he likes to lead a team. But from your perspective, what is like the main value that Spawn is adding? Because obviously Reignover can help you with more of like the in-game stuff, and then you have these two insane leaders on your team in Core JJ and Impact that have done it all. It's like the team can kind of like function and coach itself in some ways, but where is like the real value from Spawn coming in with your entire team?
I think, well, the first part is that he doesn't take a lot of shit. And then the second part is I think he helps us identify what we as a team think our goal should be within practice that week, or like just basically whatever our goal is for whatever topic. And then he holds us to our word with that goal. And then if we don't meet it for whatever reason, like we're playing poorly in scrims, or like, you know, we're dying too much in lane, or any random reason we're not meeting it, he would like I said, he doesn't take any shit. He would just very actively call us out on it. Like literally, I think Wednesday, so 4 or 5 days ago, we're scrimming the team and we're getting shit on in scrims. And he ended up just like dragging us all into a room. We're all like losing lane. We're all just playing completely dog shit. And he just straight up punches the wall. And he just flames us all for like 5-10 minutes. You know, calls us all sorts of names, and then storms out of the room and tells us to take a break. And then the next day we come back in and we play significantly better. So I think that's just like the biggest thing, where he just doesn't take any shit and holds us to our own standard.
And accountability. I like it. Holy.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it. Yeah, it feels important to have somebody like that on the team. You know, like somebody who like keeps everyone in line and can remember like what people are saying. Because I feel like that is also another part you have with teams, is like you lose track of everything as you're playing these games. You just lose track. You play so many scrim games. There's so many different things. Like you need somebody to be able to like monitor the progress and like be able to kind of like refresh what the mindset was going in and how that you're progressing towards whatever goal you have. So I mean, it sounds really useful. And yeah, I mean, I love what you guys have going on over there. So last topic we want to talk about is LCS. We're about to get into playoffs. It's going to be the final topic of the show. First, before we get into the topic, is there any reason to talk about the bottom 5 teams in LCS in your mind? Like, is there anything that like stands out? Do you think any of these teams have any hope, or is it just going to be a top 3? We're sending FlyQuest, TL, C9 to Worlds, and that's it.
Who's 4th and 5th place? Is it 100 Thieves, Dig?
100 Thieves and Dig. Yeah.
I don't think 100 Thieves has any hope, to be honest.
Does Dig have hope? I mean, they just played. We just right before this episode, just for people knowing.
Yeah.
Yamato and I just watched them play against Immortals, and they won with 2 inhibs down, like Fnatic style throw from Tactical. It was absolutely crazy. So, and they lost to Shopify recently. So, what
I want to say that team has no hope as well. But then I also do see the names, and like those players, other than Isles, used to all just be like LCS winners. So I don't want to count them out too early. I think they're the team with the most hope of the hopeless, if that makes sense.
And it's just based off nameplay. Is there anything that you see like in the games, or like do you scrim them and you're like, oh, they're actually pretty good? Or
No, not really. It's just nameplate
Okay.
gap. Like, I just don't want to be like,
All right.
man, these guys are ass when they have like Sven on the team, who's like multiple LEC, multiple LCS champion.
So you don't want to say that like Jensen is like completely counted out when he's went to Worlds every year pretty much, besides for last.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to put it is they're the most hopeful of the hopeless.
Okay. And so like NRG, you played against them, but they ended up winning the split. They have zero hope.
I don't think any of them will.
This? Like, just before we go into the real teams, like Palafox is somebody at the beginning of the year. This was a rivalry between you guys. I mean, it was supposed to be like he was tweeting out that he was your dad. Like, he obviously played well against you at Worlds. Like, and now it just feels like it's not even worth. Like, there's no rivalry anymore. Like, we don't even talk about Palafox. So, like, is this team like? How do you even conceptualize their run and their downfall?
Well, I think Ignore was important to them. I'm not so bought into like the coach's philosophy that everyone says. Like, maybe it is, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But I just think like both Palafox and Dopla just took a hard downward trajectory after Worlds, after their top 8.
Yep.
And I don't think they've like recovered from it pretty much. So I think that's where that team just like completely fell off the face of the earth. Because before it was like pretty much those two who were like, I don't want to say running the team because I'm not in the team, but they were like making all the good plays. They were making the silent TPs. They were progressing the game very, very well. But then they're kind of just losing lane now in pretty much every game, and then just like not making any positive plays, and it just fell off.
Yeah.
They just look ambitionless, though.
They do look. They look like they have no ambition. That's our thing, by the way. When we see like teams that just look hopeless, we just say they have no ambition. Like, they're just going home. They have no ambition. So we see a lot of lack of ambition right now. Like, there's some teams you just watch them play and you're like, they are just trying to get it over with so they can go home. All right,
I don't think any team.
We go top 3, yeah? C9?
Yeah.
Why is everybody... Do people just think Thanatos is a kid that doesn't know how to lane swap? I'm only seeing lane swap games against Thanatos. What is your view of C9? We talked about Jojopyun a bit, so if you can tell us your overwhelming, like overarching view of the Cloud9 boys and their new alteration in summer.
So I actually think of C9 like I think of Immortals and the way they play the game. I think C9 is just a much better players.
Okay.
I think as players, like if you compare 1-to-1 anyone on Immortals, I think they just have the better player in each role. But I think the way they play the game is very similar, especially in scrims. So I think for C9's sake, if they just don't, if you know how they play and they don't get ahead, it's very hard for them to continue forward with the game. I know we threw game 1 in our series like 2 weeks ago, but I kind of just blamed that game on myself because I was playing like a pig. But I think that team will struggle if they don't stomp lane very hard.
I actually made a Thanatos Castle comparison. I said that Thanatos was like Castle, except like Thanatos is just way better in lane than Castle, but they're like the same type of player where they can kind of lane, they can get a solo kill every now and then, but like when it gets to like mid game, they're just completely fucking lost. So I can kind of see the Immortals comparison, like, but Immortals just has no ambition, like we said. So, it is what it is.
Fucking Armao, man. This guy is always rank 1, you tell me? Well, I go insane.
He's always high rated, yeah. Our man, like, I don't know, like APA will tell you he's been high ranked for years.
For the junglers I play, yeah. There are a lot of bad junglers, so it's easy to farm the noobs in solo queue. Yep. But he's a good jungler in solo queue, yes.
I wouldn't have been challenger the last split without them, so you gotta keep that jungle role strong. Keep the people that are just abusing random champions. It's perfect. I'll take it.
Yeah, APA, this is your angle, brother. You need to, your trash talk needs to be, it's like, bro, your solo queue rating is ambitionless. What are you doing, Jojopyun? Fucking practice. I can see that you didn't practice, bitch. And then And then maybe you can revive SoloQ with your own violation, with this newfound power the LCS has given you, with the focus on everything that you say.
I do
That's
think.
the move, man.
So I don't see Jojo and SoloQ often, but I do think he 1v1s some of the other LCS mids. So I think that's probably where he gets a lot of his practice. I mean, I don't really talk with him, nor do I 1v1 him. But I do think that's where he gets his practice. I don't actually know what he does in the other 8 spare hours of the day.
How do you see this like 1v? Because like I've always kind of been like a 1v1 hater. Like I've always just had this idea that it's like it's not like the real game. Like you're gonna be playing around like a bunch of other factors. I mean, obviously it can be limited to some extent. But how do you view like 1v1 practice compared to like solo queue practice? Like how much, like what percentage of your like individual practice do you think should be like 1v1s compared to playing in solo queue?
I think at least specifically as a solo laner, I don't know much about if it's useful for bot lane, but at least from mid lane and top lane perspective, it's definitely useful to learn the very edge of the limits of your matchups, because it's hard, like specifically in at least NA solo queue, you already don't face against the meta champions. You know, I'm going to be facing against like Katarina, Talon, just like random bullshit mid lane. Like that's not going to be played.
Yep.
So there's already that. But then even if you do face a meta character, it's normally just piloted by a noob, and you're just going to like completely shit on them no matter what you do. So I can understand it from that perspective. Like if you want to really learn the matchups individually, like, you know, you do this, they do that, you like just the super niche things about the matchups. But I think past that, it's not that useful for like practicing like mechanics or things like that. I think solo queue is much more useful.
Yeah.
I can say from my end how we always used like 1v1 and 2v2 practice was, it's like I noticed that in scrims, like my bot lane would like fucking all in to death, like level 1 to test something, and it might be useful for them, but they're wasting the time of like fucking 20 people that are involved in the scrim set, you know, like, and this would be like just a big waste of time. I think it's like a good way of preparing yourself for the actual practice, because there's things that you can figure out that doesn't require like you to involve like all people. Like at Worlds, for example, Genji, like we scrimmed against Genji, and we 2v2 practice against them. Their schedule was so insane 2022. They would like scrim from like 10 in the morning till 1 a.m. and then they would 2v2 practice against us at 2 a.m., which is ridiculous. Wow. Like absolutely like ridiculous. And at that time, it's like we're just testing limits, and this was like the Lulu Yumi meta, and it was very useful to do this because like people figured out that the CV Yumi matchup against I believe Lucian Nami, the only way you win it is if you flash forward all in with Sivir Yumi double summoner and fight to the death. That was like the only way to win the matchup. So it's like you figured out like these intricate details that you had to be like completely like redacted to figure out in a scrim. It's like someone would shout at you if you tested this shit out, you know? So to some degree, it's a good way to like prepare yourself for the actual practice so you don't waste everybody's time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At least in scrims, when I'm probably the most aggressive player in scrims on Team Liquid, to put it that way. But I always try to rationalize it.
Is that what you're telling us?
I always try to rationalize it by thinking to myself, am I going to do this on stage? And it's like, now it's, the answer is normally yes. Like, I'll probably do this on stage, so I'm willing to do this. But before, the answer was probably like, it was most definitely no. And my team was definitely blaming me for it. They were like, why the fuck is a mid laner always dead level 3 every game?
Nice.
That's how it goes.
Well,
Let's bring us back to.
I'm happy that people flame him. It's good.
That's how you got to do it. No, I mean when you listen to him talk about Team Liquid, this reminds me of like more of the like the EU culture that we had, and I feel like NA has kind of adapted that more as we've had like different imports. I mean, it seems like FlyQuest has a different thing. I mean, the level of honesty was a big issue with North American teams for a while. I guess last team to talk about. I want to talk about this FlyQuest team because I might be wrong on this because I have the cast kind of low. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Yamato. But I think that Spawn said that he thought that FlyQuest was going to beat Cloud9 today, and Cloud9 2-0'd them. So there's like a perception that I guess you guys have that FlyQuest is a stronger team than Cloud9, or at least he has that FlyQuest is a stronger team, or at least would be stronger this week. Like FlyQuest right now, I mean, they got 2-0'd by C9. They look like they're probably the third best team in LCS, but obviously they were top dogs. They even looked like favorites coming into finals. Where do you land on this FlyQuest team? Like, how good is FlyQuest to you?
Well, we had a team dinner last night after our series, and I actually asked Spawn the same thing, and he told me he thinks FlyQuest was going to win, but he did think C9 was better. So I think it's just one of those things where
so maybe it's
you
that
just get a feeling.
that's what it meant. Yeah.
You just get a feeling that someone's going to win. I think that's probably where just his head was at. But I do know that he thinks C9 is better.
Okay.
I think for me it's hard to say because we faced them like fucking 2 months ago or some bullshit.
Yeah.
By now, so it's so hard to say because when I faced Quad was like, it just felt like stage nerves or something the way he was playing, and I didn't feel like I got to face the real Quad because I faced him like a week later in scrims. He was so much better, and even like recently now in scrims, he's definitely so much better than what he showed on stage versus me.
He looks way more comfortable now. I mean, that first series that he played, he looked mega uncomfortable, but now it looks like he's actually playing the lanes like forward and stuff.
Yeah, so I don't want to, I'm not counting him out like just off like my experience, and like I was watching today, he's like SoloQ and Jojo in the Lucian Corki matchup. So I definitely know he's a good player. I don't necessarily know where to rate them because I think they're better than most of the LCS teams. Like they're better laners. They like Inspired's really good. I just don't know what they essentially excel at. Like that's where like I actually struggle to think about like one thing where I'm like, wow, these guys are fucking insane at this. Like I think when I think of C9, it's like to me C9 is like laning phase, like especially around top lane. It's just like so good. Like you have to prep very well against their laning phase, or else you're just gonna get BTFO'd in all three lanes, and Blabber's gonna be on Nidalee, and Blabber's gonna be on Nidalee and just like get 6 scrubs, and the game's gonna be like you're just gonna be pressured so much. But for FlyQuest, the reason I struggle to think of them beating C9 or like us is just because I don't think they're exceptional at anything. I think they're just good at everything.
I have a similar read. In my mind, I feel like they remind me of like old C9 rosters where I feel like they spread themselves too thin in terms of what they play. It's kind of as if they think they are better than they are, so they don't limit themselves to certain things. It's like when I see the way C9 draft, there's a clear identity in place. I feel like the same way you guys draft, there's certain structure to certain like elements that you want to like keep in place. But I feel like FlyQuest are very, very sporadic. I think in the C9 series today, like sure they tried Nautilus and they flexed it to pick a Rakan into Braum, and they apparently like in the interview, Busio said we didn't practice this. This was just an idea he had on stage, and they just tried it. Like sure, fair play. It's a best of 3. Who cares? But it's like I feel like this has been like a trend. Like they remind me of C9 of old, where they think they are so much better than they are. Where I think, like for example, last year C9 could have beaten NRG if they recognize, oh, Berserker is our best performing player. How do we make this work? How do we set up Berserker for success? And then there was like, oh, they're playing fucking Fiora top, Fudge is playing carries. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? You know, it's like just fucking commit to an identity and like keep some kind of structure in what you're doing. While FlyQuest is kind of like all over the place, I feel like in terms of how they draft things. How do you think so? Or you go ahead, AB. Go ahead.
To touch on a little bit more, I think like last spring spring. What they were actually exceptionally good at was like side lane picking. You saw that when FlyQuest 3-0'd C9 and upper finals, I think it was. Yeah, the upper finals, where they're just like permanently hunting Jojo, permanently hunting Blabber or Fudge. Like specifically, it was Jojo, but just they had so much side lane pressure that it felt like C9 couldn't play the game if they ever went side lane. They would just always end up dying or like not being able to play the game. And even in our series, like we prep so much versus their side lane trap plays. But for this split for them, it's like they just don't have that same like edge that they had in spring, which I don't like. I just don't get where that edge went.
Jensen, the GOAT.
Yeah,
Maybe Jensen.
He's the
Or
sideline genius.
Mithy, guys. Mithy, Touch of Death.
No, the
He left
Mithy.
C9, and then he went to FlyQuest, and he has the issues of C9 of old. Nah, I'm just kidding, Mithy. You know I love you, man.
Oh, okay. Just flame Mithy and then say you love him. Nice, Yamato.
we
Perfect.
used to play together. We were on Heimerdinger's Colossi. He was my support.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it's all
Season
Mithy's
3,
fault.
baby.
I mean, when I think
Oh,
when I think about FlyQuest, I think what makes him seem a lot less scary to me is just specifically like Bwipo's laning phase. Like I remember in spring, I just thought he was so much better. Like it actually felt like he was dominating people. Like he had a bunch of picks he could go to. He had counter picks. He had the Olaf, for example, that was good. I mean, his Renekton was pretty feared, and it just felt like he had a level of pressure in the game that he doesn't have now. Where I like when I watch him now, I just never know like really what Bwipo is doing in the game. Like he'll just always do some random shit and just like I just won't be able to conceptualize like what the angle was here. Like for example, this game with Nautilus that we just watched, when he just
like
walked
proxy
behind.
farming.
Yeah, like when he
proxy
walked
farm
behind
thing?
the turret. Yeah, that proxy play. I mean, I get that he was a level up on the Orin, but he literally lost all of his HP. Like he literally lost like 800 HP before he returned any damage, like trying to make this play. And he's just like seeing that his jungler's topside, and hopefully they can win some type of 2v2. And they didn't even have damage to kill like Thanatos at this point. I feel like this is the thing that I'm missing out of Fly is like they had this style where now I actually feel like their bot lane is playing a little bit better than they were in spring. There's still issues there. They still have some really bad games. Like Busio specifically, I think could be a liability at times. But I felt like their top jungle was really strong. It felt like they were like the best of the league at points, and it just feels like they're all kind of playing solo queue these days. I mean, Quad is definitely better laner. I think that their laning phases improved, at least mid lane, but I still just I don't see where the team is going to beat like C9 or you guys, because I just don't think that they have anything in place that is like structured enough. Like where is their consistent advantage coming from? Like I know what type of team C9 is. I know what type of team you guys are. For Fly, it's like maybe specific meta champions that they could play really well. Maybe they have like really good idea of like, you know, a couple specific picks that they want to play, but the
Like
overall
Kalista.
yeah, like Kalista, they like Kalista randomly. Like, I mean, Lilia seems like it's pretty good
That's
for
it.
Inspired. Like that's just how it feels. So
Yeah.
it's definitely pretty random, like the way that they like approach the game. So yeah, I mean, APA, we've had you here for a long period of time, bro. This is maybe our longest episode so far. The end of all of our episodes, we always ask our guests, is there anything that you wanted to talk about on this show that you didn't get to, you didn't have the opportunity to, or you thought that we would ask you and you weren't able to speak on? Is there anything that we missed in this podcast? Because we really want to go like, wherever you want here.
No, not really. I think like it's hard to miss much within my career because I've not really been a pro for that long. So we kind of talked to just about every single split, and I've only played 3 of them so far.
Yep. No, it's fine. I mean, that was obviously like where we wanted to start, talk about some of your teams. But I think the interesting part of this episode, and the reason we wanted to bring you on this, was because of like your improvement and your understanding of a lot of these things. And I really like the way you were able to explain a lot of the like individual things that you've improved on in the game, like where it comes to like team fighting, and we talked about sidelaning. I feel like these are conversations that aren't had enough of. Like I think people kind of just view it as like you side lane, and you're not on camera a lot of the time when you're side laning. So unless you're going for like a 1v3, 1v2, they just assume that everything's like been even farming and stuff like that. So talking about those things, I think this is a really interesting episode in that regard. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I mean, this is gonna be the end of Sackdown episode 4. Yamato, you got something?
I just wanted to add that as the best team in the region, you guys carry like a very, very big responsibility, right? Same with G2. It's like in regards to how you do things, everyone needs to draw inspiration from you guys. And I think that as a leader of the region, you guys are doing a fucking good job. I think like maintaining a very, very high baseline, doing things the right way, and having like the other teams being very inspired, looking to beat you and to understand what you do is super, super important. And I've always been telling Dom, I was always very impressed with your improvement and how candid you were in terms of how you spoke about it and where you get that inspiration from, because it's clearly visible in the way you guys play. And I am super fucking excited to see you guys continually grow. And the last thing I would want from you, APA, is just tell me how hard you're going to stomp LCS summer and then move into the World Championships on Fighting Worlds, and then we can end it there, I think.
Perfect.
I'm not going to say we're not going to drop games, because we did drop games both C9 and Fly, but I think we shouldn't drop series. I don't think we'll be heading to the losers bracket this time around in playoffs. I'm very confident we're going to Worlds, and I'm very confident we're able to win LCS.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean,
simple and clean.
It's simple and clean, and just from somebody who's watched the region for a long time, this has been probably the most hope that I've had. So my hopium is at an all-time high. So if you let us down, APA, I want you to know how severely disappointed me and the rest of America will be. So just end
me
it.
too, bro. I have abandoned G2. You guys are the new G2.
Yeah, you guys are
the leaders of the West.
It's all on you, APA. The 15-year-old that was flaming me in solo queue while locking in Aurelion Sol, old Aurelion Sol, by the way. Like, this is now the person that I'm putting all my hope in. My mental health and my well-being is completely reliant on your performance in this video game. So just carry that with you to Worlds, and I hope you had a good time on this episode.
It's fun. Thank you.
All right.
That's
We'll see you guys next time.